Patriots postgame show of the season. We've got Coach Taylor Kyles chiming in, bottom screen, and we got Evan Lazar live from Foxborough ducking outside while we're waiting for interviews to get started. So, guys, we're just going to get right into it. First impressions, pretty obvious. What we saw here, the first Cam Newton offense, this team is going to run the ball.
Yeah, we basically got exactly what we expected. I think Cam is still in the beginning stages of understanding the offense at the line of scrimmage. Taylor, I know you pointed this out on Twitter, and I thought you were spot on. There were a couple instances there where it felt like the protection wasn't set properly, or they weren't in the right play call, and Cam might not have the full control of the scheme quite yet to be able to make those adjustments. But in terms of the running game, power reads, QB sweeps, drop plays, just right up the gut with the QB, right up the gut with the QB run. It was great to watch them use a quarterback-centric offense that really brings you back to, Bill Yeoman in the 1960s of the veer and all that kind of stuff, and what Baltimore did a little bit with Lamar Jackson last year as well. It's a lot of fun to watch them be able to do all these different things. And you see the formula together. The bully ball offense, run the football, score 21, 24 points a game. The defense is going to do its job, and you're going to win 9-10 games doing that.
Are you making 1960s football references like this is a Friday Belichick press conference?
Know the name. The veer
Fireside chats with Bill Belichick. That's where you see references like that. And then on this postgame show with Evan Lazar. Taylor, let's get your thoughts.
Yeah, I think we covered the ground game. So in terms of the passing game, I think that was what we were expecting as well. Obviously, a lot of it's going to be in the short game and expecting guys to get yards after the catch. But then we did see them struggle on third and long when you knew the pass was coming because, like we already knew, guys are going to struggle to separate outside of Edelman. We did see the Patriots at least try to give the Miami Dolphins some idea of something else by getting Cam involved in the run plays. I know some people didn't like it in the 2-minute drive, but when you think about it, Cam's your biggest weapon on offense, and you want to at least give defenses the thought that if we don't defend Cam Newton on these plays, he's just going to take off. So it's either going to affect the front or the coverage. I liked seeing him try to get N'Keal Harry involved when he saw off coverage. So we're seeing Cam find the mismatches that he needs to take advantage of. And like last year, we're going to see this offense thrive. If they're going to go deep, it's got to be on play action. So that's just going to make the ground game even that much more important because if they can establish it and get those linebackers to suck up like we saw, there was one RPO, but most of it was a lot of play action, I believe. And when you have all those things to think about, that's what's going to open the middle of the field for your offense. But it's going to be a lot of the ground game. But from what we saw with the dominant offensive line, we got to talk about them. Cam was great, but the game would not have been the same way, I think, if you had Ted Karras in there, if you had Marshall Newhouse, because the Patriots' offensive line was dominant, created a lot of holes with Cam under center when he wasn't as much of a run threat. So I think the O-line deserves a lot of credit as well for what.
Well, I'll let Evan jump in on that O-line in a minute, but we did talk about trying to open up the passing game and still learning the playbook. There wasn't a lot. There weren't a lot of looks downfield, at all today. I don't even know the deepest target was at the Edelman drop, maybe early in the first half. Mm-hmm. Just in terms of balls thrown downfield. And again, this might be what we see here, but it was, again, not only that, who was targeted. Only 2 receivers were targeted the entire game, and that was Harry and Edelman. Obviously, Bird started as your third receiver. That was it. One pass went Izzo's way and a couple to the backs, and that was it. Do you think this will open up as time goes on a little bit, or is this what you're going to be seeing in the early going with this Patriots offense?
Well, I think that there's a little bit of a trust thing going on there where you have to be able to trust Cam to open it up a little bit more. But I also think that in this matchup against Miami, you got Byron Jones and Xavier Howard on the outside for this team. 2 really good corners that being paid big money to guard guys out there for Miami. So I think that from a game plan standpoint, going down the field and testing those guys time and time again with an offense that hasn't really worked hasn't worked together a whole lot, obviously no preseason games. I think it was just the game plan today to just run the football, focus on that, get the running game going, because remember, the one thing with this style of running game is that you need reps. You need repetitions to be able to get this running game going, the misdirections, the kind of chemistry at the mesh point between back and running back and quarterback. You have to be able to do those types of things over and over and over again. So I think that what we're starting to see them do is start to build that part up, focus on the running game now, and maybe we'll get into some deeper passes against a different opponent. I just don't think this was the right team to go ahead and attack those 2 corners time and time again with these types of receivers. I think it was going to be a long day, and this was a nice game plan by Josh McDaniels.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that we love the splash plays where you get a guy deep down the sideline, but realistically, the Patriots' offense isn't built to do that, at least early on. We know that Belichick always says the first 4 weeks are kind of like an extended preseason. Well, we didn't have a preseason, so you're seeing the bare bones of what this offense is right now in terms of the identity that they want to have. And we've seen that it's a pretty effective one. They barely passed the ball. Like we said, they only had 2 or 3 targets outside of the running backs, but you still saw that they were efficient, which is what the Patriots offense is going to be. It's efficiency, it's long drives that take the ball out of the other team's hands. And then when they kind of come up and they decide, all right, we're going to stop the run with loaded boxes, all those things, that's when you see the play action over the middle, which, again, I know the boundary reps are more exciting because it's deep downfield, but when you get a guy deep in the middle of the field with those kind of passes, it's easier for him to get more yards instead of just kind of being forced to the sidelines. So I think we saw more big plays relative to the Patriots offense than they may get credit for because it was disguised with play action, which seems like, I guess, a less earned version of a deep throw. But for what we saw right now, I think that was the best case scenario. The Miami Dolphins knew what they were doing. I think it's important to understand also that the Patriots game plan wasn't anything exotic. It's what we've seen from Cam. I was watching film of Cam against the Seahawks in 2018. The game plan was almost identical. There were just less passes. It was just a lot of dominant runs and putting themselves in good positions with play calling, which was more to premium since, as we said, Cam can't really do a lot of those himself yet. So early on, I think that was the best case scenario for what we could have seen for this offense.
Okay, the offense is going to get all the flow, and all the talk here because you had no idea what you were going to see. I mean, again, this is roughly a version of what you expected, but you just didn't know how it was going to work. But on the defensive side, seems like secondary things picked up where they left off. I mean, with the exception of playing a little bit of soft zone at the end, there was not a lot of open guys for Miami, at all game long. It was nice to see, particularly, given the fact that Gilmore got torched a little bit, really the only time last year in his last game against Miami. Maybe. But still, it was not. This was a complete lockdown effort. It looked like.
It was really just the pass interference calls that went against Gilmore's the biggest plays of the game for Miami on offense. So the Patriots defense really dominated this one. I think the cool thing for me was all the different pieces that they had in that front seven moving around. Guys like Terrence Brooks, Juwan Williams, Adrian Phillips, Kyle Duggar even getting in the mix with the rookie, doing a bunch of different things, both playing in the box at linebacker positions, playing deep, playing robber positions, and just kind of moving those guys all around the formation was a lot of fun to see all of those type of how guys in the back end are going to kind of put these pieces together. These are things that we would normally look for in a preseason game, for instance, but we didn't have any preseason games, so this is sort of the first time that we've seen this group together. There was a lot of shuffling going on. I think they wanted to keep everybody fresh in the first game of the season, so we'll have to see what they do when they kind of lock down, those 12, 15, 13, 14, 15 guys that are just going to kind of play big games. But so far, I think that secondary's versatility to move guys from safety to corner to slot to box to deep, wherever they really need them to be, was on full display here just already in week one.
Yeah, and speaking of the depth in the secondary, I thought Adrian Phillips, you couldn't really ask for any more from him. He had to stop near the goal line. He slotted into Chung's role where he's really in the box, and the Patriots actually played, which I kind of expected coming in because their biggest threats are on the outside with Preston Williams and Devontae Parker. The Patriots played a lot of Tampa too, where they'll put Adrian Phillips in at that linebacker spot to cover the middle of the field. Is almost kind of like a third deep safety. It's just that with that kind of depth, it's harder to get over the top of you. So the Patriots did a really good job in that. I think the Dolphins did a good job of exploiting their zone coverages when they went with too high last year. And I think the Patriots did a much better job of sitting on top, coming down and tackling. Terrence Brooks, I know he had the pass interference in the end zone, which was a tough rep. Gesicki is a red zone threat against anybody, but Terrence Brooks was outsized, and I thought he did a decent job in terms of just being close, and he had a really good fill-in tackle in the run game. I think it was on a third down or something like that where he got a great stop. So Chase Winovich, another guy who we really see as mostly a pass rusher. We haven't talked about the trenches much. He stood out as a run defender, which he has been good at since college. We just don't really hear about it. Also, Dietrich Wise, he was used a lot as a 3 technique, kind of as an odd interior defensive lineman. He showed up, had a number of run stops. He continued to be a threat in one-on-one matchups like he's really been for most of his career. So I think a lot of the defensive efforts were what we expected. It's just you can't really just put it on paper and expect it to translate. But, like with the offense, a lot of it was what I think we expected. going based off of recent history, and they came through.
Let me ask you guys. We didn't get to see, just as far as the rookies are concerned. Keene didn't suit up. The Asi, nowhere to be found. Duggar got in some, but and then Uche also didn't suit up today. Kind of disappointing for people, kind of hoping that the Patriots would roll out some of the kids. And again, this very much could be, and largely is, I'm sure, a byproduct of no preseason. So no opportunity at all to get into a game situation for these guys. So this almost, I could see it being sort of preseason for some of these guys. But did you expect to see more? I mean, you were surprised a little bit by the guys who didn't suit up, Evan, before the game, but during the game, do you expect to see a little bit more?
I really was surprised that Uche didn't suit up for this one, and he was inactive. But then when you sort of kind of look at the way that they went about things by putting Phillips, by putting Brooks, some of those safeties in the box at linebacker spots, I think you're seeing that they're going to lean on the secondary, the depth that they have there. They're going to play Bentley. They're going to play Copeland a little bit off the line. But for the most part, I think it's going to be a lot of 5-6 defensive backs with guys playing in linebacker spots that you would normally see playing safety. So I think that's the plan here. You know, there were some rushes there where they had 6 DBs on the field where they got carved up a little bit. But for the most part, they were able to stop the run with only 6 guys in the box and one of those guys being a safety. I don't know if they're going to be able to get that done against better offensive lines, better running games. Certainly next week against Seattle, we'll see if they stick with that strategy, if they're able to hold up against a much better rushing attack. But I think what you're seeing out there right now is kind of what we expected, which is those safeties are really going to be the linebackers this year, and that's how they're going to kind of make up for the fact that they don't have great depth there. I tweeted out before the game that Gerard Mayo was working out with his group, and there was only 3 guys in the entire linebacker group that Gerard Mayo was putting through drills. It was Brandon Copeland and Franny Jennings and Juwan Bentley, and that was it. And it was just kind of funny to just see him over there with just 3 dudes around him. And that was the whole room. That was the whole inside linebackers room. There's going to be a lot of safeties playing in the box. The question is just going to be, if a team does come out and run the ball 30, 35 times against you, are you going to be able to stop it?
Yeah, Gerard's a really personable guy with a big personality and a talker. So I don't want to see him in such a small group. You might have to lend him a couple of safeties. He's going to get really lonely there. Taylor, your thoughts there?
Yeah, well, then speaking of that limited group, I think Anthony Jennings is someone who's gone under the radar since we got him. He's a very versatile player who I think was kind of miscast because he's a bigger guy you expect to be on the line of scrimmage. He was playing in coverage off the line of scrimmage. He was playing on the line of scrimmage against the run. There was a pass completed over his head, which really wasn't his fault because it was play action and the route was designed to be too deep for any, linebacker, hold defender to really beat out. But I thought it was good to see Anthony Jennings starting over Uche, who a lot of people slotted in as possibly being someone who was going to play more than Jennings. He showed me that he's picked up the system quickly, which is a large part because he comes from that Saban defense where a lot of the stuff the Patriots do on their early downs and some of it on the late downs is similar to what they do in Alabama. So I thought it was great to see a young guy being able to get on the field and not really be exposed.
Yeah, guys, final thoughts here. And again, you're heading into a totally different matchup with Seattle here. But just in terms of first impressions, anything surprise you that you saw out of the team today? And again, you did say the offense looked like you would expect the Cam Newton offense to look, certainly in the early stages here. Any wrinkles here that you saw that you're like, this is something different?
I was a little bit surprised. I mean, it's not a major one by any means because I think most of what they did was pretty expected. But Michael Onwenu getting a lot of run at right tackle, kind of splitting with Jermaine Illuminor there at that spot for most of the game. In camp, that was not the case. It was all Illuminor. So I think clearly what we're seeing is over the last couple weeks since the practices have closed down to the media, sounds like Onwenu has taken kind of a step forward here and sort of carved himself out a role as a 6th offensive lineman, a guy that can rotate in. Playing him at tackle, I think, was a major surprise. I really didn't think that he had the foot speed or the ability to change directions quickly enough to play out there, but he did it pretty well here today. He was the 6th offensive lineman in a lot of their tackle-eligible situations as well. So he's obviously kind of coming along here a little bit, and that was something that we didn't really see much of in camp. He was playing most guard and inside at camp, a little bit of center. Now all of a sudden he's playing right tackle in the actual game. So I think that they're really high on Onwenu and Justin Herron, the other rookie offensive lineman as well. Those 2 guys, kind of got the spotlight here a little bit more today, especially Onwenu, than some of the other rookies that we maybe were expecting, like the tight ends or the linebackers.
Yeah, I love that you said that because the 10 offensive linemen on the roster, I was like, there's no way they're not going to go heavy, especially with the depth at tight end. You saw that Izzo can really be more that move tight end, and then they just go big. I loved seeing that. But frankly, when it comes to Seattle, I think we're going to see a very similar game plan to what the Panthers did against the Seahawks in 2018, where it's a lot of misdirection to hold those really intelligent linebackers. And they run almost identical schemes. The Seahawks run a lot of single high zone, and then they'll mix it man when they know the back, things like that. So a lot of the concepts we're going to see, I think, could translate next week. Maybe we'll see more of the passing attack. I think that's going to slowly grow, so I don't really want to put any expectations on that. But I think we're going to see a similar game plan offensively, and then defensively, Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett are a whole different animal, present a whole different challenge. So that's going to be different. I think we're going to see some philosophical changes. But, I think the Cam offense that we saw today is going to be very similar next Sunday.
Okay, one player, again, just a spotlight player, one that we're very curious about heading into the season was, and again, there weren't a lot of targets to go around here, so judging it based strictly on stats is pointless here. I mean, Cam only completed 15 balls, but your thoughts on N'Keal Harry? Obviously, he had the one drive where he seemed to get it going. He really seemed to be trying hard to secure possession on a lot of his catches where he would just get it and wrap it up. And then ironically, he fumbles there at the goal line and what could have been a critical play, which is a stupid rule anyway, but that's a different rant for another time. But he fumbles there, and that could have been really bad as Miami came down the field and made a ball game out of it right after that. But your thoughts on his performance in general here? You want to see, he's the number 2 receiver, whether he's ready for it or not. How do you think he looked today?
I actually thought he looked really good outside of the fumble, which is such a bummer because it seems like that's a microcosm of his entire career so far, where he strings together 3 or 4 good plays and then he's got one boneheaded mistake that kind of grabs all the headlines away from what he did well. There's a couple of different plays there where he really battled at the catch point, like you said, John, and boxed guys out that were trying to get their hands in there, and he used his size, he used his big frame to kind of shield the catch point and bring in those balls. He had a nice kind of curl there, too, that he had to catch on down the field, which was nice. And then on the block on Cam's, I think it was Cam's second touchdown run on one of those QB sweep plays, he was the one guy on that side of the field, and if he doesn't make that block, then Cam doesn't get into the end zone. So he did execute the block pretty well there. I know people want to see the downfield targets. The fumble is obviously hugely costly, and that's a big bummer, I think, for me, because I thought N'Keal looked good out here today for the most part, and was just sort of that one play is going to end up, kind of grabbing all the headlines, like I said. But a nice building block, I think, for him to be able to get some separation, be able to demand some targets, and actually win at the catch points consistently here in this one.
Absolutely. And I think comfort is just a big part of it for N'Keal Harry. Like, we've seen that when he's confident, he can do some amazing things. And it's easy when it's an athlete, especially a young athlete, to just assume that they can slot into this thing that they've been doing since they were kids. But for any of us, you go to a new job or, there are different circumstances, you're going to be a little nervous the day after vacation, Let the guy get it under him, still working with Cam. A lot of things I feel like you need to think about. It's not just like they're not machines. You just go onto the field and you don't produce,
Right.
So you could say that you're unimpressed with N'Keal Harry, but he hasn't played a full season his entire career, and it's his second season. So Evan kind of took it away with all the great things that he did. He was completely right. He made a boneheaded mistake. I get it. Give the guy some breathing room. It's the first week of the season.
Do you think people are going to give him breathing room, or it's going to be a lot of N'Keal Harry criticism this week?
Oh, I'm sure I'm sure it will be a lot of criticism. I mean, when you make a play like that at the goal line, it's a dumb rule. We know that, but you got to know the rule, right? You got to know the last thing that you can do there is fumble out of the back of the end zone.
Yep.
It's a cardinal sin for a Bill Belichick team, so that's going to be one that he's going to want back. But again, you want to see him be able to run routes. You want to see him be able to get some separation and actually complete catches, even when he's battling contact. And he did all of that. So I think that those are things that he can take away that are positives. I hope he doesn't dwell on the fumble too much because he did a lot of good things out here.
Okay, on a macro level, again, everyone's going to be looking at this team. This is now 1-0 in a post-Tom Brady universe. Based on, again, personnel's not exactly the same here, but based on the way the offense looked late last year, with Brady at the helm, and what you're seeing just in one snapshot right now in game one. And it's obviously too early to judge based on entirely one game. What do you feel about direction of the offense as a Cam Newton-led offense versus the direction that they appeared to be going with Brady last year?
Well, I think this was the offense that you saw with Brady more or less in terms of the separation down the field,
Yep.
getting guys open, and they had those sort of issues last year. I think today they had some issues as well with the downfield passing game. But what you saw was that they don't need to be heavily reliant on the downfield passing game. When that's not working, they now have a running game that adds a completely different element to the offense that they didn't have with Brady under center. So I think what you're seeing is that, maybe that can make up a little bit for the fact that they don't have, a stud receiver on the outside of Julian Edelman. They don't have a guy that's going to really beat coverage and create tons of separation and be that, number one receiver, so to speak. But they might not necessarily need it if they can kind of mask that with the fact that they can now have this quarterback-centric running game and really stress defenses, put guys in conflict, use misdirection, all that kind of stuff can kind of, mitigate the fact a little bit or positive the fact a little bit that they're not going to be this prolific passing offense that we've seen, from the Patriots in the past. So in this offense, I think Cam Newton is a better fit for this unit, for this personnel, and I've been saying this for a while, than what they would have had with Brady.
That's what we're trying to get at, right? Is it? You think it's a better fit? Taylor, would you agree?
Yeah, it's just a step into the future. I think a lot of what we saw was the offense in the NFL is opening up because of these mobile quarterbacks, and you can see it on small runs. The fact that the backside end has to usually respect Cam means that running backs can kind of get ahead of steam on those runs and then go downhill in a way that's usually tough to do from shotgun. So shotgun, obviously, you're usually thinking pass, so it's another element that makes you think, makes life easier on everybody else. So again, Evan killed it. This is a step in the right direction for the offense in terms of what they can do, and there's plenty that we haven't seen in terms of Asiasi, in terms of Keen, guys who are still getting up to speed in the system. So I think it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Okay, step in the right. How much of it you think is just? I wouldn't say. We always talk about it being a copycat league. Usually, people are copying the Patriots. How Ravens-like does this look to you in terms of approach?
They haven't used as many concepts as the Ravens do. I think the Ravens use a lot more tight end in the backfield and use them to kind of get people going in the wrong direction. There's a lot more pistol that the Ravens use, so it's not the same thing. But frankly, teams run a lot of the same things. Like, it's a copycat league because most concepts are the same. You're just accommodating your personnel. Cam is more of a downhill runner. He's not Lamar Jackson where you really want him on the edge a ton unless the defense isn't respecting you outside. So I think what you're going to continue to see is a lot of Cam with the option to somehow go to the middle of the defense or at least have that be a threat.
Right. All right, guys, final thoughts before we wrap it up. Oh, we lost Evan. Taylor, final thoughts from you, because everybody I know who is here is going to want to watch Tom Brady in a little bit. But I'll just ask you, how do you think what are you expecting out of Brady in his debut?
I think he's going to make a lot of the smart decisions. He's just going to put them in the right plays, which I think will help them survive against I think this is a really tough test for them because the Saints have been together. They've got that chemistry. I think we're going to see some deep shots to some of his good guys. Is Mike Evans active? I haven't even...
Mike Evans was trending probable as at last I saw.
So I think we'll see some deep shots to him just because he's such a dominant force, and we know that Brady likes his 50-50 guys when he trusts you. Mike Evans seems like a guy he's got that with. So a lot of, I think a lot of stuff underneath the 14, stuff to Godwin, just as a reminder. I forgot he was 14 now. Maybe some deep shots to Evans, but a lot of stuff, I think, slants and things like that.
Yeah, so Evans is active. That's what I'm most curious about today, is whether or not, Taylor, it goes to whether or not he has that trust to throw those 50-50 balls, because Brady hates doing that.
Yeah. When it's a dominant player like Mike Evans, you know, it's not N'Keal Harry. It's one of the best receivers overall in the game. So, yeah, him and Mike Evans, I think he'll try to get him the ball early and often.
Okay. Well, that's Coach Taylor Kyles. Evan Lazar had to duck in. He's got interviews right now going on. He's in Foxborough with Sierra Goodwill. So we're going to have a ton of stuff with those guys after the game. So keep it here. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. You'll get all of the videos there. Taylor Kyles from Pat's Pulpit and various other places where you can find exclusive content generated by Coach Kyles himself. So look out for his stuff. He's a monster on Twitter. He and Evan basically dominated the game, going back and forth with their observations. So, and hopefully we'll be doing this every single week. And that's going to do it for our post-game show. So again, look for us after the game. Taylor, thanks a lot for being with us, buddy.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody.